The dense, alien forest of Zalath was alive with strange sounds, the kind that only the wildest places on distant planets can create. The air was thick with mist, and the trees, towering high above, twisted in unnatural shapes, their leaves glowing faintly in the twilight. It was a world of beauty, yet danger lurked in every shadow. Zara ran through the underbrush, her breath coming in short bursts, her blue skin blending with the surrounding flora. Her sharp, glowing eyes scanned the forest, every sense on high alert. She had learned to live with the fear, always looking over her shoulder, always knowing that she was the last of her kind, the last of the Eshara. The others had been wiped out years ago, their civilization erased by an unknown enemy. Now Zara was alone, hiding in the depths of the forest, trying to survive as the invaders searched for her, for any trace of her people. She heard the sound of footsteps behind her, too close. Zara's heart began to race, the hunters had found her. Not again, she whispered to herself, quickening her pace. She pushed through the thick vines and moss-covered rocks, her body moving instinctively, her mind focused on one goal: escape. Zara was used to running, she had been doing it for years. Ever since the last of her people had been slaughtered by the invaders, she had learned to survive in the wild. The forest was her home, and it was the one place she could hide. But she knew she couldn't run forever. She needed something more, something to protect her. Up ahead through the trees she spotted a familiar shape, a large, moss-covered figure standing in the shadows. Rock, the green guardian, was waiting for her. His massive form was almost invisible against the forest, the green moss that covered him blending perfectly with the plants. Rock had been her protector since the day the last of the Eshara fell. She didn't know where he came from or why he had chosen to protect her, but she was grateful for him. Without him, she wouldn't have survived this long. Zara slowed down as she approached, her eyes meeting his. He didn't speak, he never did, but his presence alone was enough to calm her racing heart. Rock's glowing eyes blinked slowly, and his large, muscular arms stretched out toward her. She ran into his protective grasp, the feeling of safety washing over her for the first time in hours. "Rock, they're close," Zara said, her voice shaking slightly. "They're getting closer every time." Rock's eyes glowed brighter for a moment, then dimmed as he gently patted her on the shoulder. Zara knew what that meant, he understood, but there was an unspoken fear in his actions now. Even he couldn't protect her forever. The invaders were relentless, their technology advanced and their numbers growing. She had no doubt that they would keep coming for her no matter how many times she ran. The two of them stood in the shadows for a moment, listening to the sounds of the forest. The footsteps of the hunters were getting louder, drawing near. Zara's heart sank. She couldn't keep running, not like this. Rock turned his head toward her and made a low, rumbling sound. It was not a word, but a sound of warning. Zara turned toward the distant sound of the invaders' movements. There was no time left to hide. The hunters would be on them in moments. Zara looked back at Rock, her face filled with determination. "We need to move now." Rock's eyes locked onto hers, and for a brief moment it seemed like he was searching for something in her gaze. Then, without another word, he nodded. His massive form began to move with surprising speed through the forest, clearing the path ahead of her. Zara followed closely behind him, her mind racing. She knew they couldn't keep running forever. Eventually, the invaders would find a way to track her down, and she would be alone again with no protector. The thought of that filled her with dread. As they moved deeper into the forest, the world around them began to change. The trees grew thicker, their trunks wider, the plants more colorful and vibrant. This was the heart of the forest, where the ancient energies of the planet were strongest. It was here, far from the hunters, that Zara felt the faintest sense of peace. But peace was fleeting. Suddenly a sound pierced the air, a high-pitched mechanical screech. Zara's heart stopped. The hunters had found them. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the glowing red eyes of a hunter, its sleek, robotic form emerging from the trees. Maury followed, their glowing eyes scanning the area. The invaders had arrived, and they were not going to stop until they had Zara. Rock turned, his body shifting into a defensive stance, his eyes narrowing as he prepared for the fight. Zara's heart pounded in her chest as she took a step back, clutching her weapon tightly. But deep down, she knew the truth. She wasn't ready. She wasn't strong enough to fight them off alone. The first robot lunged forward, its sharp metal claws reaching for her. Rock moved with lightning speed, his massive fists connecting with the invader's chest, sending it flying backward. Another hunter took its place, and then another. Zara watched in awe as Rock fought, his power unmatched by anything she had ever seen. He was a force of nature, his body a weapon made of living moss, his movements as fluid as the trees themselves. But even Rock's strength had its limits. Zara could see it in his eyes, the strain, the weariness. He was fighting to protect her, but he couldn't keep this up forever. Zara's mind raced. There had to be a way to stop them, to end this madness once and for all. She couldn't lose Rock, not like this. She couldn't let the last of her kind be wiped out by these invaders. She needed to find the answer, and she needed to find it fast. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more epic adventures. The sounds of the battle echoed through the dense forest, but Zara didn't dare look back. She couldn't afford to. With each crashing footstep of Rock, her massive protector, and the terrifying screeches of the hunter robots, the gap between them and the pursuing invaders was closing. The once peaceful, vibrant world around her was now a blur of twisted branches and glowing flowers as she ran for her life. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her heart pounding, her mind spinning with fear and uncertainty. The invaders had been tracking her for days, and now they were here. They had found her again. There was no place left to hide, no sanctuary in this world where she could feel safe. The Green Guardian, Rock, was her only hope. His massive frame powered through the forest with effortless ease, crashing through the underbrush as though it were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. His glowing eyes flickered with a mix of determination and something else, a deep, unspoken fear that Zara had come to recognize. He wasn't just protecting her from the hunters. He was fighting for something much greater, the survival of their kind, perhaps even the survival of the world itself. A loud mechanical roar interrupted her thoughts. One of the invader robots had managed to leap from the trees, its sleek, angular body crashing to the ground in front of her. Zara didn't have time to react. Instinct kicked in. Without thinking, she sprinted toward the side, narrowly avoiding the robot's deadly swipe. She stumbled but caught her balance in time to see the machine's red eyes lock onto her. A flash of green moved beside her, and Rock was there, his massive hand slamming into the robot's body. The force was enough to send it flying through the air, crashing into a nearby tree, but it wasn't enough to destroy it. The robot quickly righted itself, its glowing eyes glaring at Zara with a cold, lifeless intensity. Zara turned to Rock, her eyes wide with panic. "We can't keep this up, they keep coming, we need a plan now." Rock's eyes flickered, but his expression remained stoic. The forest seemed to grow darker as the invaders continued to pour in, more of the machines emerging from the shadows of the trees. Each robot was a calculated predator, methodically closing the distance between them. Zara's mind raced. She had always known that the hunters would eventually find her. But now, standing face to face with them, she realized just how relentless and unstoppable they were. She needed to think quickly. They couldn't outrun them forever. The forest wasn't big enough, the planet wasn't isolated enough. A sudden thought sparked in her mind. "The heart of Zalath," she whispered under her breath. "That's it." Rock turned his head toward her, his glowing eyes narrowing. Zara's pulse quickened as the idea took hold. The heart, deep within the planet, hidden far beneath the surface, was a legendary power. It was a source of immense energy, and it had been safeguarded for centuries by Zara's people, the Eshara, until they were wiped out by these very invaders. If she could reach the heart, it could be their salvation. But getting to the heart would not be easy. The invaders had already tracked her to the surface, and if they were after her, they were surely aware of the heart's existence. Zara knew she had to act quickly. The heart was powerful, but it was also dangerous. If used incorrectly, it could tear apart the very fabric of Zalath itself. She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting Rock. "We need to find the heart. It's the only way to stop them." Rock's posture shifted slightly, his moss-covered shoulders tensing as if the idea had weighed on him as much as it had on her. For a moment there was only silence, broken by the distant hum of the invaders drawing closer. Finally, Rock's deep voice rumbled. "The heart is not a weapon, Zara, it's a force of balance. We cannot use it lightly." "I know," Zara said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her chest. "But we have no other choice. They won't stop until they have everything. I'll go, you protect me." Rock's eyes flashed briefly, his massive fists clenching. Then, without another word, he stepped forward, guiding her through the dense forest, away from the encroaching invaders. As they moved, Zara could hear the soft, mechanical footsteps of the robots, their sensors scanning the surroundings, tracking every movement, every change in temperature. The invaders were relentless, but they weren't yet closing in on them. "Do you know where it is?" Rock asked, his voice low. Zara nodded, though uncertainty flickered in her heart. She had only heard stories about the heart, the place where her people had once drawn their power. No one had ever found it again after the fall of the Eshara. It was said to be deep within the planet's core, far below the surface, in a hidden location that only a few knew about. But Zara had learned enough from the ancient texts passed down by her ancestors to find the general direction. "We need to head toward the eastern mountains," she said. "There's an old temple near the peak. I remember reading about it in the archives before everything happened." As they pushed through the dense forest, Zara felt the weight of the world pressing down on her. The invaders were closing in. She could feel it in her bones. The heart was their only hope, but it was also a gamble. She didn't know if it would even work or if they would survive the journey. Every step felt heavier, the thick air pressing against her chest as she fought to breathe to keep moving. But there was no turning back. Not now. The forest ahead seemed to grow darker, as if responding to her thoughts. The path they were following began to twist, becoming more treacherous as the ground shifted beneath them. The air felt thicker, charged with a strange energy. It was as if the planet itself was beginning to sense their journey. Rock's steps grew slower and Zara turned to see him looking at something in the distance. His glowing eyes flickered with an unspoken fear. The hunters had followed them, and they were close. Zara's heart skipped a beat. It was now or never. They had to reach the heart before the invaders did, or risk losing everything. Zara's footsteps quickened as she pushed deeper into the alien forest, the sounds of the hunters' pursuit growing louder in the distance. Each crunch of leaves underfoot echoed like a drumbeat in her ears, amplifying the tension. She could feel the weight of her decision pressing down on her, heavier than the jungle's oppressive humidity. There was no turning back now. They had to reach the heart of Zalath, and they had to do it before the invaders closed in on them. The path ahead was becoming increasingly difficult to navigate. The towering trees with their twisting branches and glowing vines seemed to shift and grow in response to their every step, as though the forest itself were trying to hinder them. Zara could feel the energy of the planet around her, a strange pulse that seemed to guide her forward, but it was also dangerous. The closer they got to the heart, the more unstable the environment became. The air felt thick with a low hum, and the ground beneath them trembled slightly, as if the planet were aware of their presence. Rock's massive form loomed behind her, his moss-covered body blending into the surroundings. Though he was enormous, his movements were swift and silent, a shadow among the trees. Despite his size and strength, Zara could see that even he was struggling. The energy of the heart, drawing closer with every step, was weakening him. His eyes flickered with an eerie glow, and his usually steady pace faltered for a moment. "Are you okay?" Zara asked, glancing over her shoulder. Rock's deep voice rumbled softly in reply. "I will be fine. The heart, it has a strong pull, but I've lived with its energy for many years." Zara nodded, but unease settled in her chest. The heart was more than just a source of power, it was a force. Ancient and unpredictable. If Rock was feeling its effects, that meant they were getting closer. The heart was calling to them. Suddenly, a loud, mechanical roar echoed through the trees, cutting through the tension. Zara froze, her heart skipping a beat. The hunters were near, closer than ever. "They're catching up," she whispered, panic creeping into her voice. "We have to hurry, Rock." Rock gave a low growl, a sound that resonated through the ground, deep and primal. "They will not catch us, keep moving." Zara's eyes scanned the path ahead, her heart racing. She knew they couldn't outrun the invaders forever, not with the terrain growing more treacherous by the second. The forest had always been her refuge, but now it felt like a labyrinth designed to delay them. As the trees thickened and the path narrowed, Zara felt the ground beneath her shift. The earth trembled once more, stronger this time. The air felt heavier, and an unnatural stillness took hold. Without warning, the ground beneath Zara cracked open, sending a shockwave through the forest. She barely had time to react as the earth opened up beneath her feet, revealing a dark, yawning chasm. She stumbled, her foot slipping on the loose ground. Before she could regain her balance, a hand shot out from behind her, steadying her. Rock had caught her. "Be careful," he warned, his voice low, his glowing eyes scanning the newly formed chasm with suspicion. "This is no natural formation." Zara's breath caught in her throat. The chasm was not just a crack in the earth, it was an opening, a deep, cavernous pit that led downward. The air around it was charged with a strange, eerie energy, unlike anything she had ever felt before. It was as if the planet itself were alive, breathing, waiting. "What is this place?" Zara asked, her voice trembling. Rock looked down into the dark abyss, his eyes narrowing. "This is the path to the heart, we must descend." Zara's stomach churned. She had heard of the heart being hidden deep underground, but the chasm felt unnatural, like a scar on the planet's surface. It was not the path she had imagined, but there was no turning back. The heart was their only hope. Without another word, she stepped forward, her hand gripping the side of the chasm to steady herself. The walls of the pit were slick with moss, and the air grew colder the deeper they went. Rock followed closely behind her, his large frame moving with surprising grace despite the narrow path. The descent felt endless, the darkness growing heavier with each step. Zara's mind raced with thoughts of the invaders, of the looming threat they posed, but as they descended further she could feel the heart calling to her, its pull growing stronger. It was a subtle whisper at first, like a faint heartbeat in the back of her mind, but soon it became more pronounced, louder, filling her thoughts. It was as if the heart knew she was coming, as if it was waiting for her. The deeper they went, the more Zara could sense the change in the air. It was thick, almost electric, charged with ancient power. And then, just as they reached the bottom, the walls opened up into a massive underground chamber. The space was vast, stretching far beyond the reach of Zara's eyes. The floor was covered in ancient stone, weathered by time but still solid. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. At the center of the chamber, illuminated by an eerie blue glow, was the heart. Zara's breath caught in her throat. It was unlike anything she had ever imagined. It wasn't a typical stone or crystal, but a pulsating, living energy. The heart was both physical and ethereal, its form shifting and flowing with every heartbeat. It radiated an overwhelming power that seemed to vibrate through the very ground beneath her feet. Rock stepped forward, his eyes glowing brightly as he regarded the heart. His voice was reverent, almost awed. "This is the source of all life on Zalath. The balance of this world has been tied to the heart for millennia, but its power has been lost, forgotten by most." Zara stepped closer, her heart pounding as the heart's energy washed over her. She felt it deep within her bones, resonating with her own energy. It was the same feeling she had experienced when she had first met Rock, the feeling of something ancient, powerful, and alive. The heart was a part of her, a part of everything. But the invaders weren't far behind. Zara could sense them, their presence like a shadow creeping closer with each passing second. They had to act now. The heart's power was their only chance, but it came with a price. As Zara extended her hand toward the heart, a sharp voice broke through the silence. "You can't control it," a mechanical voice called out from the shadows. Zara spun around, her heart racing. The hunters had found them, and they weren't here to negotiate. Zara's heart raced as her fingers hovered just above the pulsating surface of the heart of Zalath. The chamber around her hummed with an intense energy, the power of the heart reverberating through the very air, filling the space with an electric charge. It was as if the planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to make a choice. Her eyes scanned the dark chamber, the strange symbols on the walls glowing with an eerie blue light. Every step she took seemed to echo, a reminder of how far she had come to reach this moment. But then, the mechanical voice from the shadows cut through the silence like a blade. "You can't control it," the voice said, its tone cold, calculated, and utterly unyielding. Zara spun around, her hand instinctively moving to the weapon at her side. Emerging from the shadows, several hunter robots stepped into view, their glowing red eyes fixed on her. The sound of their mechanical footsteps echoed through the chamber as they approached. There were more of them than she had anticipated. The invaders had finally caught up, and now they were ready to claim the heart. Rock stepped forward, his massive frame blocking Zara from view. His glowing eyes burned with a fierce intensity as he prepared to fight. Zara could feel the unease in his stance, the way his massive shoulders tensed. These hunters were unlike any they had faced before, more advanced, more determined, and clearly aware of the heart's power. They had been sent for one purpose, to take control of it. "Stay behind me," Rock's voice rumbled, a low growl beneath his words. "I'll hold them off." But Zara didn't want to hide. She wasn't just going to stand by and watch as the world she was fighting to protect was taken from her. This was her chance to turn the tide. The heart was within her reach, and she couldn't let it fall into the hands of the invaders. "No," Zara said, her voice steady despite the storm of panic swirling inside her. "We need the heart, we need to use its power." Rock's glowing eyes turned toward her, his expression unreadable. "You don't understand, Zara, the heart is not a weapon, it is a force of nature. To wield it without knowledge is to risk everything." Zara clenched her fists, the invaders were closing in. There was no more time to argue. "We don't have a choice," Zara snapped, taking a step forward toward the heart. "If we don't use it, they will destroy everything. I will not let them win." With a deep, rumbling sigh, Rock reluctantly stepped aside, allowing Zara to approach the heart. As she moved closer, she felt the energy in the chamber intensify. It thrummed through her veins, pulling her in like a magnet. She could feel it, the immense power that lay within the heart. It was calling to her, its energy coiling through her limbs, a presence far beyond anything she had ever experienced. Zara extended her hand, her fingers brushing against the surface of the heart. The instant she made contact, a jolt of pure energy shot through her body, causing her to gasp in shock. The power was like nothing she had ever imagined. It was both overwhelming and invigorating, a tidal wave of energy crashing against her consciousness. She could feel the history of her people, the ancient connection to the heart, flow through her like a river. The walls of the chamber seemed to pulse with the heart's energy. The light from the symbols grew brighter, and the ground beneath Zara's feet began to tremble. The invaders didn't stand a chance. They had no idea what they were up against. But that wasn't the problem. Zara's body shuddered, the energy coursing through her veins faster than she could control. The heart's power was too much, too overwhelming. She could feel it threatening to consume her, to pull her under. Zara, Rock's voice boomed, filled with urgency. "Stop, you must release it now." But it was too late. The heart had connected with her. Its energy was alive within her now, and the pull was too strong. The world around her blurred, her vision darkening as the power overwhelmed her senses. Zara's head spun, her mind struggling to grasp what was happening. She could see flashes of the ancient Eshara, the long-lost people she came from, visions of their rise and fall, of their connection to the heart and the immense sacrifices they had made. But these visions were fractured, and they weren't just memories. There was something else, something darker, whispers of an ancient prophecy. A prophecy that warned of the heart's true potential and the catastrophic consequences of using its power without understanding its full scope. The invaders watched, unmoving, as the chamber seemed to come alive with energy. The walls shook, the ground cracked open beneath their feet, and the air hummed with a low, menacing sound. The invaders' weapons hummed to life, their red eyes glowing brighter, but they didn't make a move. They were waiting for the heart to do its work. Zara's heart raced. She could feel the heart's power stretching beyond her, far beyond the chamber, into the very core of the planet. It was alive, and it was responding to her, but Zara wasn't sure she could control it anymore. The energy was so vast, so ancient, it was as if the entire world was shifting under its influence. The power threatened to tear through the chamber, shattering everything in its wake. "Zara," Rock's voice rang out again, but it was distant, faint, as though the very fabric of reality was warping around them. Her body jerked, a violent tremor racing through her. The invaders began to step forward, sensing the power, sensing weakness in her. "Release it, Zara," Rock shouted one last time. But Zara couldn't. The heart was beyond her control now. It was too powerful, too volatile. The invaders, their patience running thin, raised their weapons in unison, their sights set on Zara. The chamber grew colder, the light from the heart flickering ominously. This was it, the final choice. With one last, desperate breath, Zara closed her eyes and focused. She could feel the ancient energy thrumming through her, could feel the heart's power calling to her. She had to take control. She had to command it. But even as she tried to channel the heart's energy, she realized the truth. The heart would not be controlled by anyone. And in that moment, Zara understood. The power they were dealing with wasn't something to be used. It was something to be protected, something that could either save or destroy them all. The question was, which would it be? Zara's vision blurred as the power of the heart of Zalath surged through her, overwhelming every inch of her being. The room around her seemed to warp and twist, the walls vibrating as if the very fabric of reality were bending to the force of the energy. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears, each pulse resonating with the intense, ancient power that now coursed through her veins. She could feel it, alive and conscious, pulsating with a relentless urgency. She wanted to scream, wanted to cry out as the energy tried to consume her whole. But her body felt heavy, as if shackled to the ground. Her fingers twitched involuntarily as she grasped for control, but there was nothing left to grasp, only the heart's will, its insatiable thirst for power. The invaders had stopped moving. They stood motionless, watching her as though waiting for something. Their mechanical eyes glowed brighter, the hum of their weapons filling the air. They knew what was happening. They knew this was the moment. The heart was awakening fully, and Zara was at the center of it all. "Zara," Rock's voice boomed from behind her, but it sounded distant, as though coming from underwater. "You must release it, you can't control it. Let it go." His words, though urgent, seemed weak against the sheer magnitude of what was unfolding. Zara tried to speak, tried to force the words out, but they got caught in her throat. The heart was drowning out everything, her thoughts, her voice, her very existence. The invaders stepped forward, their movements calculated, methodical. They were ready. This was their moment to take what they had come for. Zara's eyes snapped open and the world around her shifted violently. The heart's light flared, casting sharp shadows across the chamber. She felt the intense pressure of it, pushing her to the brink of madness until, without warning, she understood. She understood the heart's true nature. The heart wasn't just a source of power, it was the planet's lifeblood. It wasn't meant to be controlled but rather to protect. It was a force of balance, not destruction. A force that, if harnessed by the wrong hands, could tear the world apart. The invaders, those mechanical monsters, wanted to claim it for themselves. They wanted to use its energy to conquer, to destroy. But Zara knew now, if she allowed them to take it, Zalath would die. Zara's breath came in sharp gasps as the realization hit her like a tidal wave. The heart must be protected. She was its chosen guardian. The Eshara had always known that one of their kind would rise again to keep it safe. But she had failed to see it until now. She was the last of her people, and with the heart now bound to her, she was their last hope. But it was too late to run, too late to hide. With the last of her strength, Zara forced her hands to move. The heart, sensing her determination, responded in kind. The glowing energy surged from her fingertips, wrapping itself around the invaders. The power of the heart twisted and warped as it wrapped around the invaders like a binding force, crushing everything in its path. The robots shrieked, their mechanical limbs locking in place as the heart's energy overwhelmed them. But even as she fought to control it, Zara knew this wasn't the heart's full power. This was just the beginning. The heart was testing her strength to wield such immense energy. The invaders were not done yet. One of the robots, its design far more advanced than the others, took a step forward, its glowing red eyes flickering with malice. This one was different. It had a sleek metallic form, more streamlined than the rest, and its movements were faster, more precise. Zara had no time to react before it fired a burst of energy, sending a pulse of electric shockwaves through the chamber. The blast hit Zara square in the chest, knocking her backward. Her body slammed against the ground with a force that left her breathless. The heart flickered, as though it were weakened by the blow. Zara, Rock's roar filled the chamber as he rushed to her side, but the damage was done. The heart's energy was slipping from her grasp. The alien hunter leader, the most advanced of the machines, moved in swiftly, his mechanical hand reaching out toward the heart. Zara's heart skipped a beat as she realized what he was doing. They were trying to seize control. "No," Zara cried, struggling to push herself up. "You won't take it." Rock, his massive form still powerful despite the toll the battle had taken, charged forward. With a bellow of fury, he collided with the leader, sending it flying backward, but the damage was already done. Zara could feel the heart weakening, the energy flickering out of her control. The invaders were closing in. Panic gripped her chest as she saw the other robots advancing, weapons drawn. The chamber's energy was slipping, and Zara was losing her connection. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the heart, but it was as if the power was slipping through her fingers, pulling away from her. Then something shifted. A quiet voice deep inside her whispered, "You are the Guardian." Zara's eyes snapped open and the world around her came into sharp focus. She could feel the Eshara within her again, their ancient connection to the heart reigniting. The heart was not just a tool, it was a bond, and now Zara understood it. She had to let go of the need for control. The heart could not be possessed, it could only be channeled, balanced, protected. With a sudden burst of strength, Zara pushed her hand toward the heart once again, and the chamber exploded with energy. The invaders screamed as the heart's power flooded out of her, a torrent of energy that swept over the robots, disintegrating them in an instant. The leader tried to fight back, but it was no use. The heart, bound to her, responded with its full force. The room shook violently, the walls cracking as the heart's light grew blinding. The energy surged, and for a moment it felt like time itself had stopped. But then the light began to fade. Zara fell to her knees, the weight of the power lifting from her shoulders. The heart's glow dimmed and silence filled the chamber. The invaders were gone, reduced to nothing but scattered debris. Her vision swam. The room seemed to spin around her and she could barely hear Rock's voice calling to her. He was kneeling beside her, his massive form blocking out the light. "Zara, you did it," he said softly, his voice full of awe. Zara could only nod, too exhausted to speak. The battle was over, but at what cost? The heart had been saved, but Zara was changed. She felt it deep within her. The power of the heart still thrummed in her chest, but it was no longer overwhelming. She had learned to balance it, to protect it, just as her ancestors had. But the heart had chosen her, and it had burned through her soul. As she looked out over the ruined chamber, Zara knew one thing for sure. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The invaders would be back, and this time they would not be stopped so easily. But Zara had learned something else that day. The heart's power was not just in destruction. It was in survival. And she would fight to protect it, for as long as it took. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Zara's breath was heavy, her chest rising and falling with exhaustion. The heart of Zalath, now dim and calm, pulsed gently in the center of the chamber, as if it too had taken a moment to recover from the storm of energy that had just erupted from it. The invaders were gone, their bodies reduced to nothing but smoldering remnants scattered across the floor, but the cost of victory weighed heavily on Zara. The planet itself seemed to sigh in relief. The tension in the air had lifted, and the oppressive hum that had filled the chamber moments before had faded into a stillness that was both peaceful and unsettling. The heart's power had been turned back, but only by Zara's hand, and now she was left to face the consequences. Rock stood silently beside her, his massive form hunched slightly with the weight of the battle. His moss-covered body was bruised and scarred. But he was still strong, still standing. His glowing eyes flickered as he gazed at the remains of the invaders, then turned to Zara with a quiet, worried look. "You have done what few could ever hope to accomplish, Zara," Rock said softly. His voice was both awed and filled with a quiet sorrow. "But the heart's reckoning has only just begun." Zara nodded slowly, her hand resting against the cool surface of the heart. She could still feel its pulse within her, still sense the power that coursed through her veins. The connection was both a blessing and a curse. The heart had chosen her, but with that choice came responsibility. It wasn't just about protecting the heart, it was about guarding the balance it provided, the balance of life itself. But Zara was beginning to realize something else. The invaders weren't the only threat to the heart. The planet had been disrupted, the balance broken. It was possible that the heart could no longer remain dormant, hidden from the universe. Its power, once dormant and carefully guarded by the Eshara, had now awakened fully, and the galaxy would take notice. "We need to leave," Zara said, her voice steady despite the turmoil she felt. "The invaders may be gone, but they won't be the last to come for the heart. We must hide it. We must keep it safe." Rock's eyes flickered and he gave a short nod. He had always been Zara's protector, but even now he sensed the gravity of her words. He knew the heart's power had been disturbed, and once disturbed it couldn't be ignored. The invaders had been just one part of a greater problem. The heart was a beacon, a signal to all who sought power. As they moved to leave the chamber, Zara paused. She glanced back at the heart, her hand lingering in the air. It was almost as though it was calling her, begging her to stay, but she couldn't. There was no time. The heart had done its part, and now it was her turn to protect it. Rock's rumbling voice broke through her thoughts. "We must go, the storm is coming." Zara turned to face him, her mind racing. "What do you mean, what storm?" Rock stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the horizon outside the chamber. The ground beneath them trembled ever so slightly, and a low hum filled the air, almost imperceptible. The forest outside the chamber, once alive with vibrant energy, had gone still. There was no wind, no sound of creatures. Only an eerie silence that pressed in from all sides. "I sense a disturbance," Rock said, his voice filled with unease. "The heart's energy has rippled through the core of the planet. It has awakened something, something old, something powerful." Zara's pulse quickened. She had always known the heart was powerful, but she hadn't realized just how far-reaching its influence was. The invaders had wanted the heart to control the universe, but they hadn't understood its true purpose. Now, as the heart's energy began to radiate outward, Zara could feel it. The planet was reacting to it. Something ancient, something long dormant, was being stirred. "We need to get to the surface," Zara said, her voice now filled with urgency. "We need to find out what's happening." Without another word, they made their way back through the crumbling temple, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The atmosphere around them had shifted, the air charged with an energy that was foreign to Zara. Every step she took, every breath she drew felt heavier, as though the planet itself was pressing in on them. When they emerged from the temple's depths, Zara squinted against the harsh sunlight. The once vibrant forest was now eerily still. The trees, usually alive with movement, stood silent, their leaves no longer glowing. The ground beneath them trembled with a deep, rhythmic pulse. Zara could feel it beneath her feet, vibrating through her bones. And then they saw it. In the distance on the horizon, a massive shadow loomed, something enormous, something ancient. It was as though the world itself had begun to break apart. Zara's heart skipped a beat as she saw it, a colossal dark shape rising from the planet's core, its form barely visible through the dense clouds of dust and ash that had begun to swirl around it. "What is that?" Zara whispered, her voice trembling. Rock's eyes narrowed, his expression darkening. "That is what the heart has awoken. It is not an enemy, it is a force older than the Eshara, a force that has been bound beneath the planet's surface for eons." Zara's breath caught in her throat. She had no words, no understanding of what this ancient force was or why it had been hidden beneath the planet for so long. But she felt it, its power, its hunger. "Rock," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "what do we do now?" "We fight," Rock said, his voice steady. "And we protect the heart. But this force, it will test us, Zara. It will not be easy. It will take everything we have." The wind began to pick up, swirling around them as the shadow grew larger on the horizon, moving closer with terrifying speed. The trees groaned, their roots pulling from the earth as the planet itself seemed to shift beneath them. The ground trembled more violently now, and the air was thick with a suffocating energy that pressed against Zara's chest. She turned to face Rock, her eyes filled with determination. "We will protect it," she said, her voice filled with a strength she didn't know she had. "We will protect the heart no matter what." Rock nodded, his eyes burning with the same resolve. "We are the guardians of this world, Zara, and now we must face the greatest trial yet." As the shadow loomed closer, the silence around them deepened, and Zara knew this was only the beginning. The heart had been awakened, but the true test was yet to come. The sky above Zara darkened, the storm on the horizon growing closer with each passing second. The wind howled through the trees, uprooting them with unnatural force, and the ground beneath her feet trembled as if the planet itself were alive and in pain. The shadow loomed ever larger, a towering, colossal presence that blocked out the sun, casting a cold, suffocating darkness across the landscape. Zara stood at the edge of the forest, her mind racing, heart pounding in her chest. Beside her, Rock's massive form was tense, his glowing eyes fixed on the approaching storm. His every movement was deliberate, controlled, as if he knew they were no longer fighting to survive, they were fighting for everything. "The heart has awoken," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible over the howling wind, "and with it, this." Rock nodded solemnly, his gaze fixed on the shadow that moved toward them, seemingly inexorable. "The heart did not awaken by choice, Zara. It has always been a force of balance. But now something ancient stirs. This shadow you see, it is no mere force of nature. It is a living thing bound beneath the surface of this world for eons, and it is tied to the heart." Zara's stomach churned as the truth settled in. The heart wasn't the only force with power, it was part of something much older, much darker. And now that it had been disturbed, the planet was unraveling. "We cannot fight this thing with the heart alone," Rock said, his voice low and filled with quiet dread. "It is too old, too powerful. If we engage it in direct combat, we risk bringing about the very destruction we wish to avoid." Zara turned to face him, her expression hardening. "Then what do we do, Rock? We can't just let it tear the world apart. I won't let Zalath fall." Rock's glowing eyes softened, and for a moment there was a flicker of something almost compassionate. "No, Zara, you are right. This world must be protected, but we cannot do it alone. The heart is a source of balance, but there is another force, a power that is tied to the very heart of the planet." The realization hit Zara like a bolt of lightning. The Eshara, her people, had always known about this power. It was not just the heart that needed protection, but the balance between creation and destruction, the force that bound the planet's life together. Rock spoke slowly, carefully, as though choosing his words with the weight of centuries. "You are the last of the Eshara, Zara, and you must become the key to that balance. The heart's power, your people's ancient knowledge, it is all connected. You must access the source beneath, the core of Zalath, to bring peace to this world." "But how?" Zara asked, feeling a new wave of uncertainty crash over her. How can I control something so massive, so powerful?" "You must tap into what you are," Rock said. "The Eshara were the guardians of this balance. Their blood flows in your veins. You are not only a survivor, Zara. You are the embodiment of your people's purpose." Zara's chest tightened as the weight of his words sank in. She had always seen herself as the last of her kind, but now she realized that being the last also meant she was the only one who could restore order to the chaos. There was no one else. She looked toward the shadow, still moving closer, spreading across the land like a plague, twisting everything in its path. It was unstoppable. But with the heart's power, Zara could tap into the ancient forces that had been dormant for so long. She could be the key to restoring balance. The first step, though, was reaching the core, the very center of Zalath. Only there could she connect with the deep elemental power of the planet, but that meant venturing into a place far more dangerous than any battlefield. The core was a place of ancient energy, sealed away to protect it from those who might try to exploit it. Zara knew that only the most determined or the most desperate would dare to enter. Rock turned to face her, his eyes glowing with a fierce intensity. "We must go now. The storm is coming, and if we do not reach the core before it reaches us, everything will be lost." Zara nodded, her heart heavy with the burden of what lay ahead. "Then we go together." The journey to the core was not easy. The landscape around them had begun to warp, bending and shifting under the influence of the shadow that moved ever closer. The land itself seemed alive, responding to the invasion of this dark force. Trees uprooted themselves, the ground cracked and split, and the sky above turned an unnatural shade of red as though the very heavens were in mourning. As they approached the central mountain range, the last barrier before the core, Zara felt the air grow thick with a heavy, oppressive force. Every step she took felt like a battle against the very fabric of reality itself. The world was shifting, and the heart's energy, though powerful, was like a storm raging inside her. It was becoming harder to control. "We're close," Rock said, his voice gruff. "But the forces at the core are not easily tamed. There are guardians, ancient protectors, who have been watching over it since the days of your ancestors." "What kind of guardians?" Zara asked, her voice tense with the uncertainty of what awaited them. Rock's eyes flickered. "Creatures of both flesh and energy. They will not allow just anyone to approach the heart's true power. You must prove yourself worthy, Zara." Zara felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She had faced enemies before, but these guardians were not mere robots or invaders. They were part of the very planet itself, manifestations of the energy she was about to awaken. To gain their trust, she would need to become something more than just a survivor. She would need to embrace her legacy as a protector of the balance. Suddenly the ground trembled violently. A rumbling noise filled the air, and Zara turned to see a massive rift split open before them. From the chasm, a shadowy figure emerged, towering, dark, and made of swirling energy. It was a guardian, a creature born from the very planet itself, and it was waiting for them. The guardian's glowing eyes fixed on Zara. It said nothing, only raised its hand in a slow, deliberate gesture. The air around them crackled with power, the very elements responding to its call. This was it, this was the final test. Zara took a deep breath, feeling the heart's energy surge through her once again. She had to prove herself. She was the last of the Eshara, the one who could restore balance. The guardian stood between her and the core, but she had come too far to turn back. "I am Zara," she declared, her voice steady despite the weight of the world pressing on her. "I am the protector of this world, and I will restore balance." The guardian's eyes glowed brighter as it raised its hand once more. The power in the air intensified, crackling around them. The world was holding its breath.